Welcome to the walkthrough of frequently made mistakes for assignment 1C in my CS 891 class. Please don't remove the to-do tag. It makes it hard to review the code. Second, please make sure to run all the unit tests and include screenshots for both movies and movies EX. Let's talk about the exception handling mechanisms. It's perfectly okay to use an if-else statement in the find matches async method to throw the no such match exception. However, if you don't want to revert out of the functional paradigm, you can also create a private method and use the question mark : operator by doing something like this. You could have a method called throw no such match exception that looks like this, or perhaps even better yet, you could enhance the no such match exception that's defined towards the top of the movies service class and add in a static method that goes ahead and throws the exception. And then that way you can simply throw that exception and keep things within the confines of the question mark : operator. Let's now take a look at some issues people had with the code that was implementing the controller, so the movies controller. So something important is missing here. You need to make sure that you decode the regular expression query in the controller. Down here, please make sure when you do that, you use the web utils decode query method rather than hard coding it to what's shown here. Down here, please don't use a local variable. Just go ahead and pass that directly into the parameter for search. Down here, something is missing here. Once again, it's failing to decode the list of regular expression queries. Down here, the parameter name doesn't match the name the client proxy sent. So in particular, it should look like this as opposed to what was there. So make sure you fix that. That'll give you a really strange error. And down here, please make sure you use the web utils decode queries method instead of writing the code out here longhand with the stream. Just makes things a lot more clean and concise. Moving inside some of the methods that are in the movies service implementation class, please make sure you don't duplicate the code here, but call the make pattern method, and make sure you call the make pattern method as a method reference, not as a lambda expression, as is done here. In terms of make patterns, also make sure you split things into two separate calls. In fact, you really shouldn't have two separate map calls anymore because there really isn't a need for doing things like this. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that comment that was left over from the earlier assignment. Oh, I take it back. Let me leave that here. That's for the movies module part of the project, not the movies EX part of the project. So make sure you have two separate map calls for that implementation. The make pattern method, this call doesn't belong here. There should be no call to URL decoder decode here. That needs to be moved into the controller. Moving on to get matches for patterns. Something important is missing here. The scope.fork is missing and the wrong method is being called. In general, the fork methods on scope should invoke the task methods. So that's just something to keep in the back of your mind. Other issues with get matches for patterns, this implementation is too complicated and doesn't fulfill the specification, which I omitted, but you can read it if you go look at the code here where the comments are. So simplify that, please. Down here, this is not the correct way to throw the no such match exception. I'm not quite sure what this is trying to do, but it's definitely incorrect. And so don't do this. Instead, you want to change the code to use that exception class or the if-else statement that we talked about earlier. Now, when you take a look at find match async, you don't need to use the if-else statement here. Instead, you want to use the question mark : conditional expression, and you also can get rid of using these extra open and close curly braces. There's no need to have those things. Looking at find matches for patterns task, make sure that you add the movie generic parameter to the end of ShutdownOnSuccess. It expects to have the parameter of the type provided there. And when you do that, then you don't have to provide the cast down here. You can remove the cast. Also, don't create a local variable only to return it on the next line. Just go ahead and say, basically, return scope.result. Coming down here again, some other issues here. Please split this into two lines, the scope join followed by scope.result, and make sure that you return the value that's provided by scope.result, not returning the movie. That'll cause some weird problems. There's no need to have a local variable here. You can just say pattern.matcher.find and just return that as one fluent sequence of pipelined operations. And this call here, in the context of the movie EX implementation in that module, there's no need to have a call to distinct. That's unnecessary in this context because the way we've organized the concurrency using the structured task scope mechanisms and ShutdownOnFailure and ShutdownOnSuccess eliminate the need to do distinct. There'll never be any duplicates. And then finally, this code should call the futures util helper method to simplify the logic. We don't need to call all this code here in line. And again, this code is also way too complicated. I'm really not sure what's going on there, but you don't want to be using future.get anymore in modern Java. You want to be using the future result now, and you want to be using it in the context of making the method call on the future utils method to go ahead and get that result. So that's the summary of frequently made mistakes for assignment 1C. Please make sure you address those quickly. Post any questions you have to Piazza or come to office hours, and take a look at the GitHub repository to find out when the final version of the assignment is due. We're going to grade that final version of the assignment.